Today is December 7th, 2010. We're at the home of Talbert Pittenger in Columbia City, Indiana. Present is our Mr. Pittenger, his wife Doris, camera person Euphemia Weiss, and Janet Skank, director of the Peabody Public Library, as the interviewer. Mr. Pittenger, what branch of the service did you serve in? What branch of the service did you serve in?
I was in the Navy. To start with, when I decided to go to service, took a physical down in Indianapolis, and they said, there's 3 doors out in the hall. You can take whichever one you want. So I took the Navy.
Took the Navy. And when did you serve?
I started in September of when did I serve? September the 1st to December the 16th, okay. 1945.
1945. Where were you living?
Where was I living?
Where were you living before you joined the service?
I was living at Shriner Lake, Dry Lakes. I was married the first time, and we had a baby girl, 3 months old, and I worked at the International Harvester in Fort Wayne, and since I had 2 younger brothers in service, I felt that I was no better or different than them, and I found out that my name was coming up again, and I'd have to have another deferment, which I had previously already too. So anyhow, I found out that if I decided to go to service, the harvester would furnish my wife a good job, which she did. She went to work at the secretary in the engineering department, and she worked there until after I got out of service, about a year. And so when I went aboard ship, that was in, to start with, I had training. I had training through Great Lakes. Is that what you want me to do?
You're doing fine.
I started at Great Lakes, and there was 148 of us in the company, and I played a lot of basketball in my life, and I played a lot of softball and baseball. But anyhow, when I got up there, I ran into 2 guys from Fort Wayne that you might remember the name, but Curly Armstrong and Herm Schaefer. They played basketball for Indiana University. And when I went down to take boat training, learn how to row a boat, why, there they were. Well, what was I doing here? So anyhow, I got to play basketball with them. Then I became a lifesaver at the same time, and finished boot camp, and everything went along fine. And when come out, the service report listed, my name was at the top of the list of 148. Said radar. Well, I said to the chief, what is that? I don't know, he didn't say it that way, but he said, I don't know, you're the first one I ever had. So when I come back to Columbia City, I went to the library, and there was a page and a half in there about radar being was originated in England. And so when I got back, there was 32 sailors. They picked us and we went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, the Marine base. And there was 32 Marines along, so there were 64 of us. And our instructor was from England. So after about 3 weeks or 4, I don't recall for sure, but we had to take a mental test on what we had accomplished. And if you flunked, you went out the next day, you moved. And so...
What did they,
I don't know what they'd done with them. Never
they just
heard.
weren't at the school anymore?
No, but they weren't there. And each Friday this happened. And when I got down to where we finished this class, there were 7 sailors and 9 Marines. That's all finished at. So then I got first sent to WWII, California, and I was there a couple of days, and then they sent me to Pasco, Washington, and up there I worked with the pilots of airplanes to get them acclimated to the use of radar to come in and land on aircraft carriers. And I'd go up with today, like this morning, I'd go up with one pilot and we'd come in and land, come in and land and land. And then in the afternoon I'd have another one. And I'd done that for about 2 months. And I got to become a third class petty officer. And that was pretty good back in them days. And so then I went home and took my leave of absence. I go back and one of the guys said, "Hey, Petty," said, "you're going out." "What do you mean?" He said, "You're being assigned to a ship." Well, so they sent me to Camp Shoemaker, California, and there the captain of the ship and the communication officer told me that tomorrow there'll be 30 young recruits coming aboard ship, and it's up to you to make up your list of guards. In other words, radar and sonar and up-to-date communication they'd never had on this ship before. So all of us was new to it. But anyhow, I set it all up, and it worked good. We left on my birthday, 44, on July 18, 1944. Took us 7 days to get to Pearl Harbor. But while we were going, anyhow, radar today, back in them days, is about like what you see on weather reports here today, where it goes around, only it wouldn't be nothing on the earth, there wasn't anything there. But if you come to something that's like another ship, they called it a peep, it would stick right up in the air on our television set. So anyhow, I think what I was doing.
You were on your way to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, a couple, 3 days after we left the States, one of the operators called me, and I didn't have to stand watch except when somebody was sick or like. But anyhow, a mass came on. And I looked at it and I said, "Well, that's a big rain coming. We're approaching a big rain." So well, the fellows up at the crow's nest, we called it, and the lake, better get your rain gear ready because you were going to come into a big rain. Well, they all laughed about it, and about that time the captain heard that, and he stepped in and he said, I want to see what's going on here. And he was real nice about it. He was a good fellow. So from then on, it looked like it was going to rain. Well, we'd tell them, and they'd get the rain gear out. They were ready for that.
What ship was this that you were on at this point?
Huh?
Do you remember what ship it was that you were on? The
Yeah.
okay. The Ascella.
It's 900 foot long, and it had the front section and the back section. In other words, like in here and here was where they loaded food, and this upstairs was all the captain and all the and our radar and all ready was on, and so from there on we went to Pearl Harbor where we just a couple of days, and then we headed out for the Marshall Islands, and we got in there. I don't remember what night it was, but anyhow, they were bombing that island with all the guns you could think of, and all night. And the next morning, it all got quiet, and so then we were told to load up. We had LCVPs, 4 of them on board ship. We lowered them and we loaded food into them. And they said we'd have to wait until they built the beach up high enough so that the waves wouldn't come in and catch the food. So they come in there with bulldozers and boulders. Well, on top of that, a regular dump truck and a couple fellows come through there. Anyhow, we watched them pick up bodies, probably Japanese, we never knew, but they'd pick them up and throw them up on the dump truck. And then they come in with this bulldozer and picked up and fixed up the beach, and then they put a black top down on top of a sandpaper lake, and then we started carrying food up, and I had 2 cartons. Now the reason I say I, because I was a leading petty officer of this group of communication, and that's the way they picked. You have to be able to do what you're going to do before you can ask them your men to do it. So that's what I did. Okay, I take this up and I set it down, and about half again further than here, the refrigerator was a bunker with 2 Japanese in them. One of them had his mouth open, his eyes open and the like. The other one was his eyes were shut and the like. They were burnt to death. And right outside laid 5 hand grenades. That's one of them. And so after we got our load all unloaded, the 4 of us took the 5 hand grenades and put them in our pockets.
I'm assuming they were spent.
And took them aboard ship and hid them. Because we knew we weren't supposed to have them, but then we hid them. And then a couple days later, I was standing on watch with a fella, and every half hour he'd get out and stand on the edge of the walkway, and I heard a guy down below me, and I thought the gunner's mate must be down there. And I said, I spoke to him. Yeah, he said, I'm a gunner's mate. I told him what I have. He said, there better not be any on board ship. And I said, yes. But I'll tell you what, if you decap them, you can have one. So he made arrangements, and I got a hold of the other fellas, and I brought them all into him. Took him about 20 minutes, and he did all 4 of them, or all 5 of them.
What does decap mean? I mean, when
He
you
took
say,
the powder, and he took this, see, the inside of that was full of powder. And so then, you see, when they take that, they pull this out and throw it, and whenever it hits something, then they explode into pieces. So anyhow, we brought them home, and then after we left there, we come back to San Diego. I called my wife, and she came out, and when she took us back, the engineering department worked them over. They were glad to see him. So then we went back, and to tell you exactly where all we went, the main place, one of the main places we went was in the Admiralty Islands. It was Manus, and we were there for, I was only there for 3 or 4 days, but the captain called me one morning and said, get your gear together, you're going back to Pearl Harbor. I said, I am. And he said, yeah, you're going back for technician work. I said, how soon? He said, they're on their way now. So anyhow, a seagoing plane landed, and it was kind of rough. The water was kind of rough, but they shot a rope across, and then put the first basket had my gear in it. And I thought that gear was going to get drowned, but it didn't. Then I got in that thing, and it started to cry. I tell you, I didn't get a wet rear end, but I thought I was. So then I come back to Pearl Harbor, and I stayed in the Royal Hawaiian Hotel for 8 weeks and went to technician school.
And what did they teach you there?
And I was on the 3rd floor, and then I guess the carpet was probably that thing. It was different than anything we'd ever been in. So then I went, they took me back out. I got back aboard ship, and just to say how it was anymore, but the next time we would supply food. In other words, if a ship pulled up and they had 500 people on and they wanted food, well, there was a listing that showed how much they was going to get, how many cartons of beans and peas and sugar and all that. So then we went to Auckland, New Zealand to load up. And when we got down there, they told us that we'd have to stand outside. As I recall, it was about 15 miles in from the water down a channel like to get in. And so they said we'd have to wait till morning for somebody to help us in. And the captain said, oh no, he said, we don't waste a day like that. He said, with my crew, we'll be in. So we started down, I'm on radar, and you could see the post and the markings, and they had paperwork. And in the morning, we anchored in, ready to start loading. We were there for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 days off, 1 day on. I mean, you had to work a day to be 2 days off. So we were, like you said, it was nice. I was doing Christmas preview to that. And
What'd you do on those days you had off?
Huh?
What did you do on the days you had off?
Oh, well, I can't. Well, we'd go swimming. We'd go to the beaches, and at night we'd go to dancers. I'll have to tell you about that. The first night in, the first day in, we got a phone call, and I answered the phone. And there was a young lady, and she said, tonight we're having a dance at the Orange Church, and we'd like for you sailors to come over. Well, not many responded to a church dance, you know, but there was about 20 of us or so, and I went. This gal seemed real nice, and so when I got there, I'd say roughly was 100 or better, real nice dressed gals and all, and this gal that I talked to, she played the guitar and mandolin and a banjo. Her and her sister and mother and father was a band. And so she come to me and she said, do you think we could get some more sailors? I said, yeah. So she took me to a phone, and I called back, and I'd say within 40 minutes or a half hour, we had about 100 more. It was nice, turned out to be a nice dance. And anyhow, I got a little bit acquainted with the family, and he raised peppermint. And of course, when I was a kid and up until I was in high school, I used to work in the onion fields and the peppermints. And I told him, I said, well, the peppermint oil that you're trying to sell, they wouldn't even buy in the United States because it wasn't thick enough. So we talked about it, and he fixed up another burner, and he actually told me, he said, I'm getting twice as much for my peppermint as I was. And he cut so much today, and they had a wheelbarrow. He'd load that wheelbarrow and take it up and put it in there. It was interesting, but then, from there, we went over towards Leyte up in the Philippines, and we supplied big, like a couple of them had 5,000 people there, and they took about half of our load. And then, along with it, we were sent on up to Okinawa, and we got up there, and it was terrible. And we couldn't, with our anchors to our ship, we couldn't hold. We'd have to start the motors up and keep working them in order to stick around. So then the captain got a call, and I happened to be in the office when it happened. He said, we'd like to send 12 ships of you into the China Sea in order to get away from the big storm. So it was really rough then. So then we went to 4 hours on and 4 hours off. I'll tell you what, we were that way for 3 days.
Was it a typhoon?
Typhoon
that hit?
So anyway, the first night out, and got called general quarters, and you always had to hurry up to your station. And I got up there, and the fellows on radar at that time, he said, there's something missing. There's one of them I think is missing. The captain says, it was his way of going about it, but he said, Pittenger, you take over. And I'd take over, and after a couple rounds, I'd say ship so-and-so is no longer with us. He'd get out his paper and he'd say, well, I had whatever size ship it was, and the name, maybe it was 250 people. He came to back for them. So in that 3 days we was out there, we lost 4 ships.
Wow.
And when we come back, we lowered our LCVPs and I was assigned to one of them, like I mentioned, and we started picking people up off of the sides of ships and the like, and some of them toenails, fingernails, anyhow, the sight of blood didn't suit me very well, but I was able to manage. And
These are people that had gone down with their ships from the storm?
But we had probably 60 people in there. We took them off the sides of ships or the like. And so then I didn't have to go out anymore. I was lucky. And then we started loading food, and the big Quonset hut that they had originally there was all blown away. You couldn't believe it. And it was, well, from there, we were coming back to the States. And I don't just recall, but then we crossed the international date line, I remember that. And we come up, one of the fellows was on duty, they called general quarters, and I got up there, and it was a big, what we called a pit, but it wasn't moving. And there wasn't supposed to be anything out there. And it turned out to be a submarine had lost power. And it was up, and so we sent word into Pearl Harbor, and we sent our engineers and electricians over there, and they sent their men over for breakfast. And and they ate like they hadn't ate for quite some time. But anyhow, it was interesting, and we got the submarine back in service, and so then we still took off for Pearl Harbor, which was coming back to the States. And I get up one morning and I said to the captain, he was standing there, and I said, are we going the opposite direction we did last night? He looked at me and he said, I can't understand you. He said, you seem to know what's going on. And you're right. I said, what's going on? Well, he said, we're going back to the Samara in the Philippines. And he said, you have enough points on the now. He said, if you wish to get off there, or you want to go to Shanghai, you can go with Shanghai with us. And I said, I'm getting old. Anyhow, after I'm on board, I got off and went in, and we went had some liberty there too, but we had a USO show. The bank was full of people, and rain, you never seen it rain. You could hardly get your breath. And I didn't have a dry stitch on me. But anyhow, I got back to the bunk and got my clothes changed and like, and we didn't have no more. So then the Bunker Hill, which is an aircraft carrier, came in there to pick us up, 15,000 of us. And Furman Orchid, I don't know how long you've been around Clement City, but he used to have a repair of refrigerators and washers and the like. And I seen him come aboard ship. I thought, well, I'll talk to him. But the board ship, my bunk was 6 high. They were 7 high, the bunks were 7 high, but mine was 6 high. And when you, about all you done was get up and down and go to the bathrooms and go to where you get your eat. You didn't get away from where you was very much, you'd get lost.
Now, why were you on this ship? I mean, were you heading?
We're coming home.
You were coming home, okay.
And so then I don't remember how many days it took, wasn't too long. It moved out along about 35, 40 miles an hour. And so then we got back to Oakland, California, and they unloaded all our gear, and there was in stacks or piles of it. And I looked around a little, and I didn't see mine, and the guy was in charge there. He said, well, you guys are dressed good enough. He said, you can go on liberty. And he said, when you come back, you'll probably be able to find your luggage. So we went to San Francisco, and I'm walking down Market Street, walked right into 2 girls from Columbus City. Doorbell Dryer, Doorbell Carol now. But I don't remember the other gal's name. I think I'd never forget him, but I did. But Dorabelle's still living. She lives in South Willie. She was a school teacher, retired.
What was she doing in San Francisco?
Well, I think we hit the bars.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
was she in the service? Was she in the service or war work, or just living in San Francisco?
Yeah, it just went on liberty.
Okay.
But we was back there about before dark that night, and found my baggage. So then, I don't recall for sure, but 3 or 4 days when I said you're going to Great Lakes for discharge, so we loaded on a train and come back to Great Lakes, and 15 below zero. I'm going to try to hitchhike home. And while I was in Great Lakes, I had my pea coat on and my wool blankets, and I was cold. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked up, and a guy by the name of Smith, I don't remember his first name now, but he graduated from Quessa High School too, see, and he said, I had to come down and make sure it was you, and I had to come down and see you. So he said, you want to get out of here in the morning? I said, yeah, I'm ready. So he said, you just look at the list in the morning and they'll tell you what to do. So he took care of that. But I get back to Columbus City, or to Fort Wayne, 15 below zero, and I couldn't hitchhike home. So I called home, and they come over right away. And then I ended up going back to the Harvester, and I didn't have to go back for 30 days. And
your job was waiting for you, though?
Huh?
Your job was waiing for
they
you?
had a better job than I
Better
had
job.
previously. I don't exactly know how that all come about, but anyhow, I went back and they made a working leader out of me in the warehouse. So then I was a working leader for a while. Then I became a group leader, and then I became a supervisor. And my first job as supervisors was in the warehousing. And actually I actually had a warehouse here in Columbus City. The big woolen mill building, the old woolen mill building. I had 2 tricks working in there, and about usually 8 to 10 trucks a day going in and out there. And so then Well, as far as I was concerned, I worked at Harvester for 38.5 years, and my last 5 years that I worked there was 7 days a week, 12-hour days. I was in charge of the people and repairing trucks. And wherever they worked, I had to work. And I worked there for 5 years like that. And my vacation was exactly the days. I didn't get extra days. I didn't get Saturdays off. I say Saturday we're going to work 10 hours. Come along about 5 o'clock, and you see how many you can get to work till 7:30. And so then, after that, and I made up my mind I had enough of it. I was 56 and a half, and so I told him I was going to retire. They couldn't believe it. Well, anyhow, I did. And 3 days later, I was in Florida. We'd been talking about that. So I spent 33 winters down there. I enjoyed it. And Doris and I go down for a couple of years, and naturally she didn't enjoy it like I did, but then we enjoyed it. We had a nice little double wide home, and so then I was bothered up here. This has been about 4 years ago. I had what they call progressive heart failure. And I was in the hospital for 3 or 4 days. And darn if I get down to Florida and about 3 or 4 months later, I had the same thing down there. And I was told that I might be bothered that way for the rest of my life. So I told Doris, I said, well, this is it. We're going to sell out and we'll stay back in Indiana. So about a week after I came home from the hospital, I got a phone call from the doctor, and he wanted me to go on another pill. And I haven't been bothered since. I haven't been lucky.
After you left the service, did you take advantage of any of the, like the GI Bill or any of those?
Nothing. I never even went to the hospital. My insurance is always through the Harvester. Has been A1 and still is.
Well, did your training, the things they taught you to do while you were in the military, did that help you in your civilian life, the kind of jobs that you did, or?
No. When I got out of service, I thought about getting electronics and the like, but Harvester kept me so busy that I really didn't take time for anything else. And so, like I say,
While you were on, if I can go back to the ship that you were on, the Ascella, when you were on duty, you were basically, from what I understand of what you told us, in with the radar and that type of stuff. You were a petty officer and supervising in there. When you weren't doing that, when you weren't on duty, what kind of things did you do? When you weren't on duty on the ship, what kind of things did you do?
Well, I forgot to tell you. About 2 weeks after I left the States, they come around and said, communication officer for Pittenger, we got a job for you. We want you to become postmaster. So postmaster for 220 people. I was able to sell stamps. I was able to write money orders and make up the reports to send into the government for what we did. And that took up quite a bit of my time.
So you had more than 2 jobs then, really?
Yeah, but I also went from $95 a week to $130 a month when I become postmaster. And so then when we go someplace like, I'll say the first place that I recall was at Eniwetok, and I had about a dozen bags of mail, and they told me to stick right here. There'd be a bus come by to pick me up. It rained so hard I couldn't hardly breathe. I had all the mail bags out there, and in a few minutes cleared off, and before you know it, the sun be shining. But anyhow, then when I get back aboard ship, why I didn't have any trouble getting people to help me sort out packing the mail, you know. First class mail I'd take care of, but no, I had a little room about this size for the post office.
Now, nowadays, the military, the guys that are serving, guys and gals, I mean, they use their telephone, they use the internet to talk to.
I never.
I wasn't around then. What did you guys do?
No, never. The only thing is, you maybe get a dozen letters, and you line them up by the date that they were written at home, and then you'd start reading. And that was a sad thing. Some of us would get a good amount of mail, and somebody might not get it.
Will you tell me before we started the camera about how you let your family and your wife know where you were? You want to tell us about that?
Well, my wife, her folks lived over here on Raber Road, and but to start with, I met her when she was young, and so then all through high school I went with her, and she gets out of high school, and I had worked at the Harvester, but I got laid off, and I drove truck for Cook Trucking Company, and I worked at the woolen mill, and the woolen mill, I was working there and played softball with him, and the guy that was in charge of the Bluebell called me one day. He said, "Pittenger," he said, "if you come to work for me," he said, "I'll see that you get more money." So I play softball. But bragging a little bit, I played a lot of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I also played basketball for the Harvester. I played softball, baseball. They used to say baseball players and softball players, you had to be one or the other. But he'll remember, maybe you will too, the name of Satchel Paige, baseball player.
Mm-hmm. I know Satchel Paige.
Okay, in Fort Wayne, they took 3 from the Harvester, 3 from GE, 3 from Rail Wire, and I don't know. Anyhow, there was about 15 of us, and I'm one of them. And when we played a game against colored people, and so Satchel Paige was pitching, and he's an outstanding pitcher back in them days. And I'm batting in 3rd position. And when first ball come through, I hit it late, but it went down a right field line, but I got clear to second base. And that's where I stayed. So then the next time I come up, I had talked to him once before, but I knew him in a way. But he took his hand out there like that with a baseball and smiled, and the very next pitch I fouled it, but I didn't hit it good enough. And then he struck me out. But anyhow, there's not many fellas. And you know, I run onto a guy in the same park that I was in Florida. One day he said, did you and I used to play on the same baseball team? And he goes, it was.
Well, Mr. Pittenger, before we end the interview, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about World War II?
Well, I've had 3 good wives. And my first wife, she worked at the Harvester and Lake, and we went back and we modernized our home at Shiner Lake. And one morning, one evening I get home from work, she said she'd been in bed most all afternoon and hoped the kids was all right. I had a little girl, 6, and a boy, 2. And I called the doctor and he came over right away and he gave her some medication and he said she'll be better by morning. Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning I woke up and you couldn't believe she was gasping for air. And I called the doctor and I think within 5 minutes he was there. And when she raised up, when she went to raise up, she said, "Won't do any good." She said, "I'm polio already. Can't move either leg." So we went from there to Wolf Lake back to Commerce City. They said the hospital would come in operation in 51, but we was in the hospital in 49. And we was in the section where they receive patients now. And we was there until that day. Stuart Smith stayed with me. And it came about 4 o'clock in Ireland at St. Joe Hospital, Fort William. And when we got over there, they put her in Ireland right away, and she was in bad shape. Well, she was there for 4.5 months and finally died. Doris knew her. Doris, when I was a senior at Quessy, she was a freshman. But we went our separate ways, and she had her family, and maybe you know some of them.
I'm not from this area, so I doubt it. Well, I might know the names.
Dennis over here was the custodian at the courthouse.
I don't remember that name.
Karen, her husband's Wygert, it's got Wygert Excavating.
That name I know.
And
Sharon.
you got a,
Sharon.
huh?
Sharon.
Sharon is married to an Alexander, and they live right down the way. Dennis and his wife live right next door here. But she got 5 children, and they all live within 3 or 4 miles of us here.
Wow.
It's good. I had
You
a
can see
son.
why I didn't like Florida.
Huh? What was that?
I said you can tell why I don't like Florida.
Well, to start with, and I had a son that was a good athlete. And he was a tall boy like this boy, and he worked at the Harvester. Coming home one day from Harvester in Springfield, and some elderly lady pulled out in front of him, and wrapped around a light pole and killed him instantly.
So sorry.
So that's all. But my daughter she was a school teacher and for years in Florida, and she went into real estate, and she married a guy again that they met in high school, and they become well-to-do. And they were here last week, and we enjoyed them.
Well, Mr. Pittenger, we'd like to thank you for taking your time today and talking to us. Thank you for your service, and we'll make sure this gets into our collection.
Okay,